wabarakatuh. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Very glad to be able to see so many of you on Zoom right now. We are also live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. So assalamu alaikum and hello to everyone joining us through there as well. Thank you to Radio IMSA and IMSA's operations department for helping us broadcast this event smoothly. And thank you to the IMSA youth team for always giving me something to be excited about and for keeping me motivated. My name is Zahra Hanifa. I am IMSA's youth director, and I will be moderating this panel discussion. Before we begin, and before I introduce our wonderful panelists to you all, I would like to provide some context for this event and this series. So this panel is actually part of IMSA Youth's new series called Point of View: Muslim Experiences in America, where we intend to highlight the unique voices and often untold experiences of Muslims in America. So the Muslim experience, even just within this country, is so vast and different from person to person. Muslims are not a monolith. We each have such different lived experiences. There's not one single story or narrative that can fit all of us under one umbrella very easily. I think we all know this and are generally aware of the fact that our lives are not identical to the next person, even if we share the identity of being Muslim and being of the same ummah. So through this series, we'd like to bring to light some of these stories and at the same time, highlight people we know. So our friends, our family, our colleagues, our neighbors, our teachers. There's so many stories to tell, and we are better off when we learn and understand one another and learn from each other's individual perspectives and point of view. So that is our intention and our goal for these series of events. This is just one of several sessions that we have planned for it. So for tonight's session, we actually opened this month by recognizing World Hijab Day on February 1st and asking IMSA youth on Instagram to share some of their personal thoughts and parts of their journey with the hijab. We received very candid responses and wanted to expand on this further. So we open our series tonight the same way we opened this month by highlighting hijabi women. Each person's relationship with hijab is very different, and just like many relationships, it can get kind of complicated and have its own ups and downs, its own highs and lows. And today, we are very lucky to be able to hear more about what hijab means to each of our panelists. So our first panelist is actually one of our very own Indonesian youth, Afina. Afina Aldira is currently a junior in college studying English. She was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and grew up around Koreatown in LA. Our next panelist is Sister Amina Barhumi. Amina Barhumi is a community leader, an activist, an educator, a mother, a wife, and currently works as the outreach director at CARE, Ohio in Columbus. Amina has worked in various nonprofits, particularly in focusing her efforts on supporting the empowerment and engagement of Muslim American youth. Amina has a business management degree and is currently working on her Master's of Public Administration at the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at the University of Syracuse. Our next panelist is someone I've known my entire life, Tante Fifi. Tante Fifi's hometown is in Sumatra, Indonesia, and she came to College Station, Texas in 1993 to study at Texas A&M. She's married to Om Eko Prasetyawan, and they're blessed with 4 beautiful children. They currently live in Middletown, Maryland. Tante Fifi currently works as an early childhood educator and is a home daycare business owner. Tante Fifi has also served as an IMSA sister coordinator for several years and is the current secretary and a member of the Board of Trustees of Imam Center in Silver Spring, Maryland. So please join me in welcoming all of our panelists today. If you have any questions for them, please feel free to send them in the chat. We will hopefully have time for a Q&A session at the end, but we will have to see where the discussion leads and what time it is at that point, inshallah. So before we begin our discussion, just a note to our panelists, please feel free to bounce off of each other and just speak when you feel is necessary. Don't feel like you have to wait for a cue or for a prompt from the moderator. But yeah, Okay, so to begin, we mentioned that everyone's journey and experiences with hijab are personal and unique to them. So I'd now like to ask each of the panelists, what was the start of your journey with the hijab and how does it compare to where you are now? So whoever wants to start us off, just feel free to do so. The floor is yours now.
Well, I'll get started if that's okay. Thank you so much for having me and being for being part of this discussion. I follow a lot of the work that you do, and mashallah, it's beautiful work. Um, so I'm not very prepared. I just looked at the prompts. And you spoke about uniqueness, and I think that we don't have this discussion enough. So I'm not really sure if my story is unique or not, but I will share that at a very young age, I was raised in Chicago, went to an Islamic school full time. And part of, it wasn't part of the uniform necessarily, but I wore hijab very often. Because during Salah, when we read Quran, it was something that we did. And so oftentimes from morning until afternoon, I'd be wearing the hijab. And so, any sort of errands that we would run after heading to the library, I would have my hijab on. I belong to an immigrant family that came from Lebanon, and my mom happened to also adorn the hijab. And we lived in a sort of very safe bubble, so to speak. And so, we interacted with people outside, of course, people who didn't wear hijab that were part of the Muslim community, and the society at large. But I felt very compelled to be able to wear it at a very young age. I was a fourth grader, so I was around 9 years old. And I was determined that this is something that I just wanted to do. And I understood that as someone who's 9 years old, and this was a commitment for life, I went and sort of passing comments spoke to my parents about wanting to wear it. And they were apprehensive. And so contrary to usual opinion, I had to convince them this was something and a decision that I was ready to make. And they were apprehensive, and rightfully so, but it wasn't around the reasons of wearing the hijab. It was really about focusing a little bit more inward and to say, there are other aspects and rituals that you have to be paying attention to if you even want to consider hijab. So I remember my mother and father sitting me down and like, well, your salah is like, why would you consider to wear the hijab if your salah is not something that you regularly do? And I remember that conversation early on sort of setting the stage for me for the importance of sort of that relationship with Allah as being part of the decision to wear the hijab, and being able to prioritize my life around not just kind of outwardly rituals, but also mandates that are given to us, to all of us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so long story short, over the course of several months, when they had seen that I was committed, I was determined, to committing and dedicating myself to consistency in prayer, that they felt sort of that they, obviously were going to let me do what I was so committed and dedicated to do. So, and so that's when I began to wear it. And I was lucky enough that around me were young women friends. Now are young women, but that challenged me to be able to better myself. And so I had a lot of friends who had worn and adorned the hijab at that time. And I felt like I wanted to do the same thing. So that's how my journey began. There's a lot more to the story, obviously, since being a 9-year-old. But I'd love to hear Vivi and Afina's story.
I can go next if that's okay. Or okay, so from what I remember, I started to wear the hijab when I was 18, when I first started college. And it was kind of unexpected because my mom, she didn't start wearing the hijab when she was 30. And so I was gonna like follow her footstep, and I was gonna, I was like, okay, fine, maybe when I like have kids, whatever, and I'm settled, I'll wear the hijab then. But then I realized like when I was in high school, I was kind of outgoing and I used to go out a lot. And then I kind of felt like a sense of like losing faith. And so therefore I was like, I need to change something about myself. And even though I didn't have to wear the hijab, I was like, okay, maybe if I start wearing the hijab, I can kind of focus on myself. And then I started wearing it, yeah, when I started college. And I'm so sorry, I'm so nervous. But when I told my parents, my dad, he was kind of shocked just because like I feel like now Islam is like kind of seen sometimes as like a bad thing. And so when I first wore it, my dad was like, "Oh, are you sure about it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And my mom, she was like kind of supportive about it because she didn't expect me to cover so quick. And I was like, you know what? Maybe if I start wearing it more, I can start feeling confident about myself and start changing the things that like I used to do before. And so that was kind of like my way. And I didn't really have a lot of friends that wore the hijab when I was in high school. But then afterwards, like a couple years, I started meeting people with it. And I was like, you know what? If I start hanging out with people who do wear it, I can feel comfortable. And so, yeah. And so after that, being around those people kind of made me want to wear it. And then I kind of developed like my own sense of style of wearing the hijab. And so when I started wearing the way that I wanted to wear it, I'm like, okay, it's fine. I can wear it now and I'm confident. And the more I wore it, the more confident I got. And then, yeah, I don't know, I'm not really like too shy about it. And if like people want to ask me about it, I usually like tell them like, okay, start off easy, usually talk to people who do wear it, study the hijab and like maybe study more about Islam and why it's so important in our religion. And so, yeah, that was kind of my way of wearing it.
Inshallah. Okay, I guess I'll continue, Zahra. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity for me to share my experience, mashallah. So I came here to the United States when I was 18, almost 19. And then the same year, I went to Muktamar, IMSA, MISG. Sister Amina, I hope you know what Muktamar is like. It's a conference for Indonesian and Malaysian. So in 1993, not too many people there, maybe about 200, 300 people. But I saw lots of sisters, like wearing hijab. And I'm, I, s- I admire them so much. I mean, they're friendly, they're so nice. And I feel like they were better Muslim than I was. So after the Muktamar, I really want to wear hijab right away. And of course, I told my parents who were in Indonesia that time. And in Indonesia at that time, there's not too many hijabis. I mean, Islam is not, like right now, like if you go to Indonesia right now, there's a lot of people wearing hijab. But that time in 1990, it's, like rarely we saw people wear hijab as, somebody who is really have good iman, something like that. So my parents say, are you sure? Maybe you can wait a little bit, maybe, when you get married, have kids, blah, 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 you can wear hijab. But for now, let's wait for a little longer. And then at that time, I think my environment is not very Islamic. I mean, my friends mostly Muslims, but some of them wear hijab. So that desire to wear hijab just, like short-lived for me. And then, it's not until 1999 when I got married and moved to Urbana, Champaign, where Zahra live right now. Mashallah. And in there, it's totally different environment. I met, like Indonesian's family that's very pious, that asked me to joined the halakah, to learn about Islam more. And mashallah, from them, I got the opportunity to teach in a local Islamic school. And I forgot the name of the Masjid Zahra, but mashallah. So when I was teaching, of course, I was required to wear hijab. And I think 6 months after that, because I get used to wear hijab, and I was surrounded by like friends that wore hijab. So I was like, okay, maybe this is time for me to be like them. It's not necessarily like I understand too much. I was young at that time. It's like 24, 25 years old. So I was like, okay, just, put hijab on. Maybe I'll, with time, I will be a better Muslims. So that's my story.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. I think what's really interesting is, I think a common theme is the impact of environment, the impact of the people you were surrounded with. And then also what was really interesting to hear is like the difference in parental reactions from each of you. Like there was kind of a difference in scale in that regard. So that was really cool. Thank you for sharing. The next prompt that I would like to pose to everybody, and we've kind of hit on it here and there, but how has wearing the hijab shaped you or your life experiences? Furthermore, like what is the importance of hijab to you personally? So whoever wants to start us off there.
So I'll jump in, and I think I'll begin with your last question, is what does hijab mean to you personally? And then attempt to answer the rest. But hijab is really for me an act of devotion to Allah. And part of the challenge, I think, throughout the experience of wearing the hijab is either other people telling you that it's not, or other people sort of creating a narrative outside of this kind of core identity of what hijab is. And really, that's been part of, I think, my journey in terms of the challenge. So, my story begins really rosy. A young sort of girl who's very excited and passionate and ambitious, sort of about doing something that I recognize as part of my faith. But there's no question that excitement and dedication can really be shaken really easily throughout really mundane experiences that a young person has as identity is being formed. And so, in essence, every day when you wake up in the morning to put the hijab on, you are making a decision, whether consciously or unconsciously, that you're putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. But it is sometimes through these, again, these mundane experiences. And so, for instance, in the summers, we would go visit family in Lebanon, and part of the harshest reality, I think, an experience that I've had as a young individual and deciding to wear the hijab was kind of listening to relatives comment, and I would hear them. They'd, speak to my mom, and I'd, be in the same space as, oh my gosh, she's so young, how could you let her? Or even just speak to me, why would you? You're so young. And I always felt it was really interesting because in conversations around hijab, sometimes there's this, and again, it's not to say that the society of Islamophobia right now and the heightened Islamophobia and the anti-Muslim discrimination doesn't exist. It does. But I think even more so, we have to be really careful is that even in our own homes and our extended relatives, very often the harshest comments can come from our Muslim counterparts that maybe believe that your decision is otherwise not needed, or perceives this as sort of like an act of something that is unnecessary or just cultural. And so those are some of the sort of the experiences I think that shaped very much for me an understanding to kind of really know why it is I wear it. So this constant kind of question to ask myself and be introspective. And particularly when asked sort of by people like, why do women wear it and not men? So sort of this constant questioning sort of in Western sort of societal standards of this comparison, that somehow the men are the standard, but for me, it's God is my standard. And this idea of comparison. So it's wearing the hijab, you become at the forefront of a lot of prejudice, a lot of ignorance, a lot of people who are unaware the difference between culture and faith. And so when you constantly have to respond to that, it challenges you. The challenge is not easy, and that sometimes shakes your faith around either the decision of hijab or even otherwise, just you're being Muslim. But the challenge can also be one where it forces you to look into actual reasons why you are Muslim. What is your relationship with God? And so for me, it's been sort of that that experience that constantly kind of challenges me. And in some cases, it's just second to nature. I think at this point, alhamdulillah, I could say that it is. But, growing up sort of an adolescent while a person sort of formulating their identity, there obviously was a lot of questions around whether or not this was something that I needed to keep on or not. And so just recognizing that and having that conversation, I think, is really important.
Okay, thank you. I really liked your point about how it is at the same time a constant challenge, but also can feel like second nature. I think that was a really interesting description of putting on the hijab every day. So Tante Fifi and Afina, if you guys also want to answer, how has wearing the hijab shaped you or your life experiences? Inshallah.
Go ahead, Hafina. You want me first or you
I
first?
can go. Yeah. Okay, I gotta think on. My experience, alhamdulillah, has been like really good. I've never had anyone say anything to me, and the only comments that I had was like from a professor, which for me is like kind of shocking because he's like an adult. But as far as like my friends or people that I went to school with, they've never said anything, and I've like been their first like hijabi friend. And so I guess like when I informed them like, oh, this is like part of my religion, or I'm telling them like sorry, I'm like, oh, I just wear this because I have to, whatever. And they kind of like learn from me, and they see that like, oh, I'm like just like everybody else. It's like I'm not forced to wear it, that I chose to wear it. And especially my friends from high school, I've had a lot of people who like unfollowed me just because like I didn't wear it in high school. And so I kind of like, I've told like my friends like, oh, I don't know what to do, and I started freaking out. And they're like, you know what, if they can't accept you because you wear something, then that's on them and it's not on me. And I have to like learn that like, it's okay, there people are going to look at you like weird because they're not used to it. And so the more you inform people and you like teach them like, okay, about Islam in general, and like how like the women can choose to wear the hijab or not, then it's been like really easy for me. But I guess every day, like when I do wear the hijab, I get kind of like confident because I'm like, okay, if people know why I wear it and like how much it means to me, then it's kind of like, it feels like it's normal. I've never had to feel forced to wear it. And I've had like, the more I kind of like hang out with my friends and go outside, I feel more comfortable like wearing the hijab. And let's see. Yeah, so I've never really had any hardship, I guess, when wearing the hijab because all my friends like know. And for like my non-Muslim friends, I've like actually talked to them about it, and they ask me questions and I tell them why I wear it. So yeah, I don't really have any I don't really have like any struggles, alhamdulillah. So yeah. And I also hang out with like a lot of people from like IMSA youth. And so being around people like that has actually kind of made me want to wear it also. So yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, same with me, like as I started my journey almost 22 years ago. Alhamdulillah, I never really experienced, like bad things, something like that. Um, and I feel like when I started because I want to be like, like my community, my friends. Sometimes, I got nervous. That time when I was teaching, all my students, they're 4 years old, 5 years old, but they have this, black and white kind of vision of Muslims. If you're Muslims, like Muslim woman, you want to wear hijab. So if you don't, that's mean you're not Muslim. So every day I was like, after school, if I, when grocery store, I'm kind of nervous. Will I see, my students or the family of my students in the grocery store? What if they saw me without hijab, something like that? So, but alhamdulillah, they kind of forced me to jump into, like wearing hijab. And alhamdulillah, with the hijab I started 22 years ago, I feel like it made me closer to Allah. It forced me to learn more about Islam, about our deen. And right now, I don't think I need to wear hijab because I want to be like, Zahra moms, like everybody else is in IMSA or my community, in Islam community. But I want to wear hijab because, I want to please Allah. I want to do what Allah prescribed in the Quran. So and wearing hijab, I think, gave me a lot of opportunity, to be in Muslim community. I mean, like a da'wah community. So, all my friends, I choose, from the local masjid or IMSA, imam, something like that. So they give me the opportunity to, like teach in the Islamic school or volunteer in, like Sunday school, something like that. So I think that's great experience for me. It because living in this society, you cannot be just like just by yourself and your family. Being with other Muslims, it help you face the challenges in this country. So alhamdulillah, it's been positive experience. I think like after 9/11, one time I remember I was in Indonesia that time when it happened. And then when we came back here at the airport, I think like 5 days after that, the immigration officer, told me, and he suggested me to take off my hijab. He said, America is different right now. A lot of Muslim women, get attacked because of the 9/11 event. So I think it will be safe for you to take off your hijab. I was like, I mean, when I entered America at that time, I was really scared as a Muslim woman. And I mean, that words from the immigration officer really, like struck me. Is it real? Is that, America is that different? So I was like, but I told him, thank you. But I know in my heart, I will never take off my hijab, because like scared of other people or scared of somebody else will attack me or something like that. So I was like, thank you, but I know in my heart I will, never take off my hijab because of that. I know Allah will protect me, inshallah. And experience like that make you stronger Muslim, inshallah. Yeah, I think that's my experience about hijab.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Phoebe. That was really like one, the show of strength, despite directly being told perhaps this may be unsafe for you. And I'm sure at some point, several of us have heard that about wearing hijab or about just presenting outwardly as Muslim, things of that sort. Additionally, I think another point that stood out to me was the fact that although you originally were inspired to wear hijab because of your surroundings and because of the people you were with, now you can like for sure say that it's for you, it's for Allah, it's for how you want to please Allah. So that was also very touching. Afina, to your point, I think it's very cool that you are constantly telling your friends about hijab. I think that says a lot about you and a lot about the people you hang out with. So that's also very great. Thank you for sharing that as well. Another question that we wanted to pose to you all is, oh no, where is it? Okay. Although the hijab can be a source of personal confidence and or strengthen one's faith, which both things that we have discussed just now, it also can come with some unique challenges or difficulties or just unique scenarios. What is something you wish someone told you before you started wearing hijab? So whoever wants to take this.
I think I might be next in order. We seem to be going in a particular order. I'm not really sure how to particularly answer that. I think like you began in the beginning, everyone's experience is unique. I would like to point out too as well that it, at least in the three of our stories, so Sister Vivi and Afina, community, friendships, your support system is so critical to both making the decision and being capable of keeping the hijab on. So being cognizant of that, I think, when making a decision, I think is really critical. I think something else that really comes to mind that we didn't get a chance to touch on, and I kind of alluded to at one point was, when you wear the hijab, people have an assumption about you, right? Immediately. So whether it be in the Muslim community about, somebody that represents or is pious, right, is potentially somebody who has a really good relationship with Allah. And I think that's kind of flawed. And I think we have to be careful because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And we all struggle. So, we could be wearing hijab and still struggling with our faith. And it could be a struggle for us to continuously put on. And so that's important to recognize, I think, within the Muslim community. And by the same token, individuals that maybe, have not pushed themselves to make that decision might not be even struggling with their faith as much, but might be struggling with that one thing, right? With wearing the hijab. And so I think it's really important for us not to pass those judgments and to kind of recognize, while this is one of the mandates that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed upon us to make as a decision, and it is our decision, we have that agency within Islam, but this is something that, we should strive to do and encourage others to do, but to be careful not to pass those judgments. Something else is that people pass judgments on us just because the hijab happens to represent a lot of things, right? For people who are not Muslim, and particularly in an era of a lot of anti-Islamic rhetoric, anti-Muslim discrimination. Wearing a hijab in some cases can be something that's lethal, and you could be the target for harassment and harm. Being in my position, this is something that we continuously hear about, and really this is realistic. And so I think, alhamdulillah, being in a community, helps us to recognize sort of the benefits. There's no question, but I think we also have to be. It makes me, as someone particularly who works with youth, more empathetic to those who struggle with making that decision, because we live in an era that is extremely challenging to make outward decisions towards Islam, and we're constantly also live in a time and space where influencers or social media or the concept of what beauty looks like really challenges this idea of covering a part of our beauty, because hijab's not just the cloth, the hijab on my head that covers my hair. It is how I carry myself. It is how I dress. It is how I interact. And all that is contrary to what is being told, at least in terms of beauty standards, or of how a woman should, carry herself. We live in an era that's hypersexualized. And so that is something that's really challenging. And I think as a Muslim community, we need to, in particular as mothers or as youth mentors, or as Muslim hijabi women, kind of just be hyper aware of, in recognizing that, and how challenging it is, the decision might be for young women, young Muslim women, more than it might have been even for us. And so those are some things that come to mind that pertain to the question.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really dense, but I think in the best way. Like, you hit all the points that I would have hoped to cover in an event such as this, in a discussion about hijab like this one. So again, I think the 3,000-foot level that I want to recap is the fact that, like, we can still all wear hijab and still struggle with our faith. And then on the flip side, someone who might not have those same struggles, might not be wearing hijab, like, that could be their own personal struggle. So I really appreciate that point. And all the other additional focuses on just hypersexualization in society, and then also just the state in which we are existing in, and the choices we make to present ourselves in this way. So yeah, Tanta Fifi or Afina, what is something you wish someone told you before wearing hijab?
Okay, I gotta think about this, but my struggle is a little different because my family back home, they all wear the hijab, and my mom, again, she didn't wear her hijab until she moved out of Indonesia to the United States. So I kind of had the struggle of like, oh, like I have to wear it. And I guess like my family in Indonesia knew like I live in America, so like the standards are different because it's not like in Indonesia where everyone wears it and like you're not seen as any different. And so I guess I kind of had like my own pressure of like, okay, maybe I should wear it like for like my family, and like so I can like make me feel comfortable when I'm around them. But then, you know, I kind of like naturally had like my own choice to wear it. And when I first wore the hijab, I like didn't know how to put it on properly. And like I wish someone had told me like, oh, this is how you put it on, or here are some like clothes you could wear with it. Cause like I was struggling on like, oh, what shirt I should wear with this. And like I guess like practicing modesty for me, I felt like I should have like looked into that first and then wear the hijab, because I would wear like my hijab with like whatever I had, like all my old clothes. And I was like, okay. So I kind of learned backwards and like wear the hijab first and then start learning about it more. Kind of to pick off one of like my struggles that I've noticed, which is kind of strange to say, but when I didn't wear the hijab before, I used to have like not trouble of like, you know, obviously people looking at me because I look like everyone else, but I've actually gotten more stares and like catcalled when I wear the hijab. And I'm like, yeah, and that has happened before, like a couple of times. And it's kind of scary because like, you know, I feel so comfortable actually wearing the hijab. Like I feel more confident, but then there are like adults rather than like a youth or like kids my age who make judgment. And it's like the adults for like are staring at me, or like professors or like teachers, because I don't know, it's weird because I'm like, you guys should know more about it because you guys are grown. And it's like the kids that are my age who like don't judge me at all. And it's like kind of crazy that I've had to learn like with my friends instead of like learning from like adults for me. So yeah, that was kind of my struggle, I guess.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Afina. It is often frustrating when people you assume should be more educated on certain matters tend to have the strangest prejudgments. So that is frustrating. I also really appreciated your answer about like realistically before maybe even starting wearing hijab, like practicing modesty, and then maybe like realistically speaking, changing your closet before you put on hijab. Like I think that's such a practical answer that we often miss. We're all just like, I'm gonna start. I'm just gonna do it. But yeah, so thank you for that. Tante Fifi, do you have any thoughts on what you wish someone would have told you before you started wearing hijab?
Yeah, for me, I wish like someone would told me that it's gonna be a hard, long journey, but because of this, your own strength, because of your belief to Allah, at the end, this long journey will be beautiful, inshallah. Because like I was pretty, maybe not as young as Sister Amina when I started wearing hijab, but I was 24 years old. Just like Afina, I mean, I used to like, fashion, like I like to dress nice. And then when I started to wear hijab, I, opened my closet and I was like, what should I wear? And then maybe Afina, right now you get a lot of inspiration from Instagram, from like YouTube, or bloggers. But during my era, my time, 22 years ago, it's so hard. I don't know what to wear. I want to be like have my own style, but I really don't know how. So it's I just wore whatever I couldn't find, like similar thing. Even the hijab, um, it's so hard for me to find, a good hijab that I like. So, but all these changes, I mean, all these challenges within yourself, inshallah, with your strength, with, trust to Allah, it will disappear. Like I'm getting older now. So I don't care about those stuff anymore, mashallah. I'm comfortable with whatever I can find in my closet, mashallah. And I wish somebody will so somebody told me that it's okay. Sometimes like Sister Amina too, I got challenged from my extended family. They saw me living Indonesia, like whatever, in their opinion, like maybe stylish, something like that. And then when I came back for the first time after I left Indonesia, I had one child, and then it's I gained few pounds, because of the pregnancy and the nursing and everything. So and then hijab, I don't know how to wear my hijab that time, like whatever I can throw in my head. So they made comment, how come you look like this, like you come back from America but you look like you came back from somewhere, like some other country, like. So they don't really, they didn't like how I look, but I know they care for me. They said that because they love me, but yeah, it can make you sad when you heard comments like that, especially from your, aunts, uncle that you love. But alhamdulillah, I know like Muslim girls or Muslim women are very, very strong. All that challenges that we face within ourselves or from our community, inshallah, with support from your family, your community, inshallah, um, it will be nothing. It will be the matter, the important thing is your relationship to Allah is going to get better, you're going to be stronger, and inshallah, Allah will help you with your journey.
Thank you, Tante Fifi. That was really like beautifully well put and just went completely back into like a full circle. So thank you. I also just wanted to say real quick, when you said that when you first started wearing hijab and you were like struggling with choosing things to wear and outfits and things like that, Tante Phoebe, I don't know if you realize you are a lot of our fashion inspiration for like a lot of the people my age. We look up to you as a role model in terms of hijabi fashion. So you've come a far way since then. You're our first Instagram influencer. But yeah, so we do have a few questions from the audience. If I could now segue into that, inshallah. So this I won't necessarily pose to every single one of the panelists, but just to whoever is willing or wanting to take this. So one question, we have touched upon like some misunderstandings that come with hijab, whether from Muslims or from non-Muslims. One of the questions from the audience is, what misunderstandings about hijab really resonate with you and is something that you want to clear up specifically or address? So whoever wants this.
I can answer that. Or I think first people should understand like the true meaning of wearing the hijab, because I feel like people can like look at you and be like, oh my gosh, like why is she covered, but like why is she not showing her hair, like it's not their normal. And I feel like if you introduce them to like, okay, why I wear this, or like what it is, they can kind of see it like, okay, they're just like everybody else. Hijabis are like everybody else. You know, we might not show our hair, but that doesn't mean we can't still learn. We can do other things. So try to inform them as much as they can and like let them learn about it first, instead of assuming like, oh, we're bad people, or um yeah, we're like bad people, or we don't do anything right or properly. But when I first like met my first group of like friends in college, they kind of looked at my scarf right away when I noticed that. And after a while, I started hanging out with them, and they like kind of never asked questions, but they knew that like, oh, you know, I go to school, I go to class, I eat, I study. It's like it's normal, because they see that like, oh, she's just like, you know, everybody else. And especially the friends who are girls, they're like, oh, can we see your hair even though like I'm not Muslim? I'm like, yeah, you can. I'm like, it's okay. And then as soon as they saw like, oh, okay, like I think she has hair under there, I'm like, okay, then yeah, she's just like one of us. And so kind of inform them, let them know like, hey, it's like, it's fine, it's part of our religion, it's not meant to be seen as something like derogatory or like something scary. So inform whoever doesn't know about the hijab and more about Islam, and just start off there. And if they don't feel comfortable, that's on them and not on you, because you know you've done enough in order to say like, oh, what the hijab means to yourself and why people wear it. So yeah.
I'm going to add something here. And thank you so much, Afina, for being like full of energy and love to everyone around you. You know, in terms of being able to kind of clarify what it means to be a Muslim. And I have, you know, been part of experiences where I felt constantly being, you know, having to kind of explain, right? You become sort of the point person for questions, because there's always this assumption that you represent like all of Islam, like all of it in this one person. And so you get asked like questions that are so like, um, uh, so twisted. And, you know, and there isn't really this concept of hijab when it's worn, like questions like, do you take a shower in it? Or, and so, you know, I think, you know, particularly being raised in the United States, being somebody who's worn hijab in the 90s, um, I don't feel a sense of responsibility that I need to explain to anyone anything about necessarily my faith, unless they come and ask me in sort of a respectful fashion. So if we're having a conversation, I think with people who are like-minded, that, you know, are not stereotypical, are not bigoted, by all means, I will carry a conversation with you. If you intellectually want to ask me about what hijab's about, if I'm coming to be able to speak, about cultural competency or something like that. But I think we have to be really careful because it could be really draining, I think, on Muslim women who wear the hijab to somehow be at the forefront of just constant explanation, right? To constantly having to represent, to constantly be smiling, constantly be at your best because, people are looking and, you're representing all of Islam. That could be exhausting. So I think that we also have to kind of be careful and sometimes allow ourselves to let our guards down because we are human. And I don't say let your guard down in terms of to transgress against Allah. No, I just mean that not always kind of weigh this heavy sort of burden on our shoulders that somehow we are the mouthpiece to all of Muslim humanity, past and present, and the future. So we're not, and we shouldn't be. And so really doing kind of our due diligence, just like you mentioned, Afina, maybe with those that were continuously around, to make a space where they are comfortable to ask. So I'd much rather somebody ask me than make an assumption, right? And then we can have a conversation and kind of discuss it. And so the person who asked the question around, is there something that resonates with me? And I don't necessarily think there's anything that resonates. I think that the prejudice varies, but it's along the same lines. All has to do with women being inferior. Like the theme is women are inferior. You don't make your choices. You're not capable. It prevents you from self-actualizing and doing things that everyone else can do. And I feel sorry for you. So that's basically the theme, right? And it has sort of tangents and extensions, all of which are untrue to a very strong extent. The one thing, though, that I think that I'd like to be able to challenge, and something that really harps on us being very careful of, particularly in terms of women, is for me, it's about women themselves being at the forefront of faith and scholarship and knowledge in Islam, and something that we oftentimes within the Muslim community don't share. And sometimes that, in fact, and the spaces that we have in our organizations and the spaces we have in our masajids really plays a role in how Muslim girls think of themselves and how they see the Muslim community seeing them as women within their community. And so that is something I think, and I know that this is not necessarily about, stereotypes, but I would say that that is part of the internalized stereotype that many young girls have, because that is what they're told on the outside. And if they're seeing that sort of within the community, it literally plays in and aligns with a stereotype and becomes something that they really, then it becomes hard for them to cope with this idea. And they can just kind of accept that the stereotype is real because this is what I'm experiencing within my Muslim community. So that would be something that I think hurts the hardest and is the strongest to be able to take, because I feel like we have a lot of work to do in the Muslim community. MashaAllah, I think in IMSA, you guys have it down, which is really amazing. You guys have lots of Muslim women leadership, but I think that there's a lot of communities who still struggle with that. And I think it's important to recognize that our young Muslim women face that sometimes very often, and something that we have to kind of push against even with our own communities.
For me, Zahra, I do not like, any one of us will not like how the media portray Muslim, right? How media portray Islam. So we live in like small town USA, Middletown is very small. I think population is less than 10,000. So our family is, few of the Muslims who live in this town. I don't know, I really never seen anybody, but I heard there is another Muslim, but I never met them. So I feel like, just like Sister Amina said, don't put all the burden on you, but I feel like I'm the representative of Muslim here. So, and this is a very, like Republican, town. So I was like, okay, this is my chance. This is our chance. All the family, all the Prasetyawan, this is our chance to show, the people in this small town what Muslims are. We are different from what media has portrayed us. Like Afina said, we are just like other family. We are like other people. We go to store, we go to like a mall, we watch Netflix or Korean drama or something like that. So I want to show this little community how Muslims are. So like to my neighbors, to the people who I used to work, with, to the grocery people, like I'm the Muslims, and I can be nice to you, yeah, I just want to show how Muslim or how beautiful Islam is. To my neighbors, we are respectful, and when you do something like that, they will respect you back. It's just the law. So, alhamdulillah, so far, even though we know that we are different in this community, there we didn't have any trouble. I mean, we didn't get any trouble. Mashallah, we feel that we are welcome. Alhamdulillah. And anybody, if they want to know about Islam, I will see this opportunity for me to explain more about Islam. Sometimes they ask me, like during the pandemic time, sometimes I forgot my mask. I don't know how I do that, but I still forget my mask sometimes. And I just, like, it's so easy for hijabi. We can just, take the hijab and cover it. And then sometimes they were like, are you always wearing that? I was like, no, this is my mask today. I just forgot my mask. But I do wear the hijab. This is called hijab. So, I try, not to take every question as offended. I try to make, like, oh, this is my opportunity. You can ask me anything. So, yeah, I hope, being in this town, at least, like they will realize that, oh, I know a Muslim family and they're just like us. They're maybe Muslim, they have different belief, but they're just like regular American. That's what I want to portray to my community here in Middletown.
Okay, thank you, Tante Fifi. That was a very great answer. I think we've all fallen into the hole of like, because we wear something that signals to everybody else around us that we're Muslim, we should represent a certain way. But I do also want to sound off on Sister Amina's point about we should also be very careful about like how much responsibility we're putting on ourselves as individuals. And then also seconding Afina's point that at the end of the day, if they're not comfortable with it, that's on them. This is more about them than it says about you and how you carry yourself as an individual. But yeah, alhamdulillah. So I think I'm going to do one final closing question to each of you, just something quick, maybe fun. It doesn't have to necessarily do with stuff we've covered today, but just in general, what advice would you give to your younger self? We've talked a lot about like identity and formative experiences and things of that sort. So in reflecting on that, yeah, this wasn't on the prompt sheet that I gave you. So if you can't come up with anything, that's totally fine.
I'm going to say something that Sister Vivi said a little bit earlier, and I think what I say to my younger self and continuously actually say to myself today, alhamdulillah, I had this excited, ambitious, passionate sort of decision while I was young and stuck with it. I'd also say that I forgot my point. What Sister Vivi had said was this idea that it's a journey. That every decision you make, and even outside of hijab, but any decision you make, takes you on a trajectory somewhere, right? So small decisions, they could seemingly feel small, but decisions about friendship, decisions about committing to wear the hijab, all these decisions, but particularly one around such a commitment and an outward appearance of being Muslim really takes you down a trajectory that you need to set sort of the stage for in terms of support mechanisms throughout the way to make sure that those around you support you with your decision. And to pivot away from experiences, spaces, and people that don't. So if you're actually committed, just being very cognizant and careful about anything that makes you question a decision that you know is for the intention of Allah, let that be the gauge, and then steer far away from those. So that way you are sort of continuing on this path, even if you're kind of zigzagging through, because, you know, it's a challenge. So it's a journey would be the phrase. Thank you, Sister Vivi, for that. And I apologize if that's something that I've taken away, but I feel like it's absolutely the case. It's a journey.
I can go next. Okay, so I think what I would say to myself is to be confident. And I think one of my thoughts before wearing the hijab was I always was scared of like what people would think of me, and like even though I didn't know them. And I think that's the part that like I should have like taken into consideration. Like even though like I might be a little bit scared to wear the hijab, you might like run into people who are going to make these comments, and even though you don't want to hear those comments can like actually make you stronger. So I've had like probably one person say something about my hijab, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop wearing it because they feel uncomfortable. I'm going to take that and be like, okay, you know what, you don't understand it, that's fine, I'm still gonna wear it, I'm still gonna, you know, move on, making sure that like I'm a better person and that their comment doesn't affect me. Because the more I feel like, oh, like people are staring at me, or like that's gonna like not make me confident, and then I want to be confident wearing the hijab. And yeah, so I think I wish I said to myself like, you know what, just wear it and go with it and grow from that, instead of like you know, taking what people are thinking and they're like, oh no, never mind, I don't want to wear the hijab anymore. So I wish I told myself like, it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to like learn from your struggle and grow from that and be confident, is what I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing as Afina, mashallah. Yeah, I was, my younger self would worry, about what people say about my appearance, why she's wearing hijab, what is that on her head, something like that. But, don't worry about what people said, you have to be comfortable who you are. What you choose to wear, and if you are comfortable, nothing else is matter, even though they, judge it, but if you're confident, you will be, don't worry about that, and you will, get what you want, and as a hijabi, you can do whatever you want. Do not limit to yourself, like, oh, I cannot be that, I cannot be, this. But look at now, women with hijab, they're in House of Representative. They can be Olympian, in Olympic. They can be ballerina. You can be whatever you want. Even with hijab, it will never limit you. Be whoever you want. Put your goal, reach for the sky is the limit. So, for, my younger self, I would say that, be comfortable who you are, and, be whatever you want. And I hope, all the youth who's watching now, mashallah, reach for the sky, be proud for who you are. You are amazing, amazing, amazing. And mashallah, I watched Zahra since she was a baby, mashallah. And I saw Afina, before her hijab. And I am very, proud of you all, mashallah. You made me so proud. You grow up to be a independent, mashallah, strong woman. And I hope more girls, inshallah, look for inspiration from Afina, Zahra, Fadila, and Kiana, and everybody else who I admire so much. Thank you, mashallah.
Thank you, Tanta Fifi. I can't even close after that. That was so nice. That was so thoughtful. I really do appreciate it, and I really do hope that, inshallah, our youth have learned from this and have been inspired by all the stories from you all the various comments and misunderstandings that shaped you as a person, but then at the end of the day, all the things that strengthen you, all the things that made you sure in yourself, in your decision to wear hijab, in your own relationship with Allah. I think that is a very common theme that rung through tonight. So thank you again for your time and sharing with us. Again, I'd like to stress that the hijab experience is different for everybody. And while we have heard extensively from our three panelists, we would not want to claim that this is inclusive of the journey of everyone who wears the hijab, who has previously worn the hijab, or will wear the hijab in the future. There's not one single path to take. Everyone will figure things out differently in ways that makes the most sense to them. So thank you again to Afina, Sister Amina, and Tanta Fifi for speaking with us today. Once again, when we go out of our way to learn from other people's perspectives and point of views, we are better for it. So thank you to our audience for coming tonight and learning and listening with us and allowing us to provide this for you. Before we close, just a quick note from IMSA. Please pray for our friends and family in Texas dealing with the repercussions of severe weather conditions, the snow, which I'm sure most of you have heard of by now. If you or anyone you know need financial aid or support due to this, IMSA Care has a financial aid request form for this. So please either check IMSA Facebook, IMSA's website, or contact one of the organizers for more information on this financial aid. And as always, stay tuned for our next IMSA Youth event. We have just added several members to our department, and we're blessed with a great team that constantly does great work. So inshallah. Okay, so with gratitude, with love and community, in solidarity always, let's close this session. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you again, everybody.